Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna, and this is my presentation on the importance of effective solid waste collection contracts. For context, solid waste needs to be collected and disposed of safely and properly. This collection and disposal is facilitated through collection contracts. Those contracts that I'm looking at specifically for this project are between a city and a private hauler. Effective contracts are essential in ensuring proper collection and disposal of solid waste. However, due to barriers like a lack of staffing, budget constraints, and time, collection contracts are often poorly written, implemented, and managed, and are not as effective as they could be. Some current problems related to this in solid waste are low participation rates in recycling and composting, high contamination rates, and just overall confusing messaging. For this project, I developed the research question, what are the most desirable features of an effective contract and why are they important? To answer this question, I worked as a consulting intern with Been There Consulting, which is a local solid waste collection contract consulting firm. For the internship, I worked to create a contract database for across Washington, gathering those contracts through online research. I then analyzed them for certain collection features in contract with the Department of Ecology, and I created a customized consulting presentation for cities across Pierce County. For this research project specifically, I analyzed 13 of those contracts from Pierce County. My methods for analysis and for my research were in online research and a literature review, which I used to help identify those desirable features and why they are important. And I also use that to gather the contracts together. Through a contract analysis, I coded those qualitative desirable features and then analyzed each contract to quantify how many of those features were present. For my results, I ended up identifying 6 features across those 13 contracts. In this table here, you can see them listed from most common to least common. First of all, I had a definition of terms. This is important in ensuring accessibility and ease of management for whoever is in charge of managing that contract, as oftentimes that person is not an expert in solid waste, so this just makes it more accessible, and also important in harmonized messaging throughout the contract and throughout solid waste in general. A definition of terms is just good practice to have in any legal contract. On that same line of accessibility, we have a list of recyclables. This is important in harmonized messaging as there are lots of discrepancies across counties and cities and as in what can actually be recycled. And so this is really important in working to lower contamination rates and just be really explicit about what can actually be recycled. Comprehensive reporting requirements are important in the implementation and management end of things and ensuring that the contract will be effective ongoing and ensuring communication is continuous between the city and the hauler. Outreach and education is when the hauler is required to do outreach to the customers and to the residents of the city. This is important in promoting participation in recycling and composting and also lowering contamination rates by really educating those customers on what they can put in the recycling, compost, and garbage. A performance review with the city is along the same lines of those reporting requirements and ensuring follow through and accountability and making sure that the contract implementation and management is just really well done and not a second or background thought for collection contracts. Just really making sure we're holding the hauler accountable for what they've said they're going to do in the contract. For a little bit of a further analysis, I identified a couple additional barriers to contract management, one of those being commencement year, which is the year that the contract was written and implemented. Some of these 13 contracts had a commencement year as early as 1998, and some were written in 2026, so a really wide range. This graph here, figure 3, shows the commencement year compared to the number of features found in each contract, and you can see there's a slight positive correlation, which means that contracts that were written earlier were more likely to have more of those desired features. So, for the key takeaways, like I said before, solid waste collection contracts are essential in facilitating waste collection and disposal, and this was just further proven by my research. and it's important in protecting human and environmental health. However, barriers, like a lack of important contract features, are harming the effectiveness of these solid waste collection contracts. By increasing public knowledge and educating city staff through research projects such as this one or through like the consulting services that Been There Consulting provides, we can work to improve contract effectiveness. Additionally, adding these important contract features through amendments or just rewriting the contracts in general, like maybe the really old one that was written in 1998, we could work to improve the effectiveness of the contracts, specifically maybe in improving participation and lowering contamination rates. Some areas for further research are in the impact of upcoming legislation. Legislation like the Recycling Reform Act will have mandatory harmonization laws which will require the contracts to be updated. Recycling Reform Act is specifically in recycling, but there is also upcoming composting legislation as well. Interviewing city staff and managers in charge of managing the contract would work to help gather more qualitative data on those people's feelings of effectiveness and where they think they have barriers to management. And finally, expanding contract analysis to more diverse counties across Washington state and even at the state level as a whole would provide areas for further analysis, maybe in comparing Eastern and Western Washington, as Eastern Washington has very different solid waste metrics, contracts compared to Western Washington. I just want to say thank you to my parents and to my sister Sarah for supporting my UW journey as a whole. And I want to thank my site supervisor Jeanette and my faculty advisor Sally for helping me make this project so successful. Thank you.